Welcome to the Multiverse Movie Club B-Sides. So this is kind of a little supplemental video series of mine and Cape Joel's larger Multiverse Movie Club. And here I'll be going it alone and exploring some films, short films, other things from around the internet me and Joel probably won't be getting to over in the main show. For the first episode, I chose the newly released horror short Sweet Revenge, which you can find on YouTube, and I'll throw a link to it in the description below. Sweet Revenge, directed by Mike P. Nelson of Wrong Turn remake, not the original, and VHS 85 fame, sees a group of friends venture out of the hustle and bustle of the city and into the wilderness, specifically a lovely cabin next to a large lake for some much needed R&R. The opening shots with all of the characters driving to the lake are intercut with the main character Eve, played by Ali Ioannidis, talking about why her boyfriend decided to get engaged with her.
Why did he choose me?
Jesus, Eve. Because you're a force of nature, and you didn't run away.
As openings go, it's not bad, but the way it's shot, it feels like a commercial for a car insurance or some type of medication that has a laundry list of side effects. It's oddly clinical, like it knows the beats and shots it needs to do to get to where it needs to go, so it just does them and it gets in and out in less than a minute. So I guess it goes by pretty quickly. It's just very odd and feels very car commercial-ish. After that, things get a little bit better as the characters arrive to the lake house via a sweet synth soundtrack, something I'm always for. The gang meets the local caretaker, this weird looking guy called Harold, who takes a weird liking to Eve. Like the minute he sees her, he just doesn't stop staring at her. Everyone settles into the cabin and the setting takes on a kind of timeless feel, like it's the present. We see everyone using smartphones, but the way the characters dress, the cabin itself, the area the cabin is in the lake house, it feels like it's stuck in the 1980s, and it's an aesthetic I welcome with open arms. I like that in a horror film where it has that kind of timeless era feel to it.
Eve.
Things begin taking a more sinister turn when Eve, having wandered away from the group, meets with the caretaker again. Harold, ever the creep, offers Eve a freshly picked apple from the local orchard, deciding to drop some local lore.
You got a beautiful spot here.
You know, the wife and I saved this spot from demolition. Property's had a bit of a troubled past.
Harold is kind of acting like the old Harbinger characters horror slashers of the 1980s would do. You know, some old timer who knows things about the area and things that go on and warns the main character away. But they just never listen, they only there to warn them and they never really interact with the story. But here, Harold is kind of just letting it all happen. Like he knows some weird shit is going to go down, but just doesn't really stop it or even really warn anyone, just kind of mentions that something happened. There is a Chekhov's gun moment here, which I love though, as he mentions an outboard boat motor Eve's fiance wanted to use for fishing, and Harold has fixed it up all for him, so I'm sure that's going to come back at some point. Eve returns to their cabins, finding that there are other holiday makers nearby who venture down to the lake as she tries to convince her fiance to come sailing with her.
I'll tell you what, I am going to go to the lake, and you can find me when you're ready.
Okay, I will go get my swimsuit.
Who said anything about a swimsuit?
We get another classic horror trope here where sex is alluded to and used to tempt a character into going somewhere, and Eve's fiance is more than up for it. And Eve doesn't wait around though and heads down to the lakefront to wait for him, and it's here she's spied on by Harold again, this time via a sniper scope. It also feeds into this weird fascination thing going on with Harold where he seemed very interested in her when she first appeared and kind of like recognized her or something. And it looks to be continuing here with him, I guess, tracking her or keeping an eye on her and what she is up to. However, it kind of goes nowhere as it's just revealed he's just kind of being a pervy old man, since once Eve puts her shirt back on, he packs up shop and leaves and is kind of like, oh well,
Show's over.
Get on with my day sort of thing. Eve decides to go sailing off by herself, and we get some really great shots throughout this section of the film where she's sailing up the bank of the lake and she sees some of the other guests from the other cabins, and you feel and know something isn't right. Since all of the shots are from her point of view, she can't really see them. She can sort of like make out that they're up on the shore, but she can't see if they are doing anything, or she just knows that they're there, and we get a very brief shot of like a dead, viscerated corpse. Things take a very hard right turn here as Eve hears banging on the bottom of the boat. It sounds like something being scraped across it. Suddenly she is pulled into the water by some unseen force, as the camera pans over the dead guests we saw from before, confirming they were indeed gruesomely killed. Night soon falls and suddenly Eve bursts from the water and climbs ashore. She seems to have been underwater for a very long time because it's turned nighttime now. Whatever grabbed her must have pulled her down and she must have escaped or something, and it's just kind of one of those turn your brain off horror moments. Eve wanders ashore and finds Harold's shack, and upon entering she finds him murdered. So it's a fucking great reveal, and made even better by practical effect. I like the jaws kind of like hanging loose with the apple shoved in it, and the eye and the rifle scope. It looks fantastic. Everything begins ramping up here as Eve hears screaming from a nearby campsite, and after arming herself with a machete from Harold's shack, she heads towards the screams, finding some of the other guests she saw earlier heading down to the lake have been butchered, their bodies pegged up on a clothesline in pieces. Again, more practical effects, and they look fucking great. Also, just the detail in the pair of legs here is great. There's this neat little detail on the top of them where they are pinned to the clothesline by a pair of jumper cables, being that normal clothing pegs probably wouldn't be able to hold up a set of legs, and also kind of hints that maybe those jumper cables were used, against the person to electrocute them or something maybe. Eve races back to her own cabin, and before entering she sees her fiance making out with her best friend Dana. Like, damn dude, you just couldn't wait? She's been missing for only a few hours and you're already moving on? As Eve watches the betrayal, we finally get a glimpse of the killer as they walk up behind Eve, and it's not really more of a glimpse, it's more of an audio cue of who the killer is. So surprise, it's Jason Voorhees. Sweet Revenge is the official return of Jason Voorhees in what is being called the Jason universe. I'll get to more of that in a moment, but Jason confronts Eve here and picks her up and throws her right through the plate glass window into the cabin. The hockey-masked wearing undead killer bursts into the cabin and uses the motorboat engine Harold mentioned to peel the face off of Eve's unfaithful fiancé. So this is our first good look at the new Jason design, something I saw before the short film was ever released. I saw the mask, like I'm sure many other people did. And look, I know horror fans can be quite passionate about horror and horror in general, and lots of people did not like this take on Jason, but I really don't mind it. Jason has looked a lot of different ways in the last almost 50 years, and I absolutely think that this is like one of the less egregious takes on the character. There's definitely worse ones, but I do think though the guy playing him is quite small. This Jason is a very small boy, especially when compared to the great Kane Hodder. Jason makes short work of the group in the cabin with some fantastic kills. He uses the boat's engine like a shuriken and kills a guy fleeing out the back door, and then he uses an apple corer on Dana's face, although he doesn't actually get to kill Dana. I want to give a shout out to Ryan Shadley and Becky Ingram who did the effects on this short. It looked fucking great, and the kills and gores were really quite cool, and the right level of kind of gore and blood as well. It didn't go over the top, and there wasn't, less of it. It was just that right amount for a short, just to kind of drag you into that world again. So as I said before, Eve survives this machete to the gut and is able to pull it out and stab Jason and escape Dana, and so far she's survived drowning and now the machete to the stomach, and it makes me think she's some sort of zombies, maybe something similar to Jason himself, another doomed soul that Crystal Lake has claimed. But I do like the idea of the short introducing not just Jason but also potentially a new killer or like someone adjacent to Jason. So Eve and Dana escape in a car, but Eve ends up stabbing Dana through the head and causes the car to crash. Eve obviously survives the crash and confronts Jason, who's been chasing them, and I like that it just alludes to like that classic Jason teleportation skill he seems to have, where he can just like appear even if you're like speeding down a road in a car and you somehow crash and you're like kilometers away from him, he'll just be there. So one thing I haven't talked about yet is how this short came to be, since this is technically an advertisement for Angry Orchard Hard Cider, who bankrolled the short as part of a deal they made to create a Jason branded cider for the upcoming Halloween season, and I think they're also somewhat partial owners of Jason now somehow, with the rights that are all messed up. So when I first heard about that, like many people, I thought this was just going to be like a big product placement filled thing, like a Super Bowl ad sort of thing that just happened to have Jason in it. But the product is barely featured throughout this entire short, which really surprised me. We do get shots a couple of times of Eve drinking the hard ciders, and obviously there's the apples that the Harold and Eve eat, but apart from that, it's not really in it, and it's not like right in your face either. Also, side note, the Thriller Pack, which is what they are calling the Jason branded cider, looks really awesome, and as a cider drinker myself, I am disappointed I can't get any here in Australia, and I'd love to have those cool collector cans that come in the set in my collection. So that was Sweet Revenge, the beginning of a new Jason Voorhees universe. I don't know exactly what that means right now, but we've got stuff like the Camp Crystal Lake show being filmed right now, and no doubt another movie is somewhere on the horizon. Again, the rights are kind of all over the place, so that some are owned by some other guy and some are owned by some other guy, and they can't really work things out. So hopefully this might mean that there is something coming, since we're actually actively getting Jason Voorhees content again. For something meant to be a product advertisement, it wasn't actually that bad, and despite a few bumps here and there, I actually quite liked it a bit. Tell me in the comments below what you thought of Sweet Revenge, and what you like about Jason Voorhees, what you don't like about Jason Voorhees and Friday the 13th. Tell me if there's anything else you want me to cover on this little show that I'm planning on doing. I love horror, so I've got some ideas on like where I'm going to take the show, but if you've got some ideas, just throw them out at me. I am interested to see what you guys think. I'm Matt, and I hope you enjoyed the episode, and I hope to see you again.